Hello, everybody. Welcome to my review of one of my favorite bands of all time, the Moody Blues. They put out a total of 16 studio albums. There are different phases to this group. They went through different changes. They've been around since 1964 until recently when they finally disbanded. So I'm going to start with number 16 and work my way down and fill you in with some information on different parts of their history and things that they accomplished and different aspects of their band's history. So number 16, I'm going to put an album that came out in 2003 called December. It's a Christmas album. I haven't listened to it. I looked over the titles of the songs, and good for them for making a Christmas album. But I haven't listened to it. Maybe I will this coming December. So I'm putting it at the very bottom. If it's a Christmas album, anyways, I don't really feel it needs to be rated with the other albums that they put out. So we're going to put that at number 16. And number 15 was the first album by the Moody Blues called The Magnificent Moodies, which was released in 1965. The lineup for that band was quite different than the classic lineup of the band. They had Mike Pinder, Ray Thomas, Graham Edge, Clint Warwick, and Denny Laine. They had a hit single on that album in 1965. It charted at number 1 in the United Kingdom and number 10 at the U.S. Billboard charts. It was called Go Now, and it was a really good song. It was a cover, though. It wasn't an original song. They did have a few original songs on that album, but this really, for me and for most people, isn't the Moody Blues. So I've got that album at number 15. After Clint Warwick and Denny Laine left, they replaced them with Justin Hayward and John Lodge. This was the really beginning of the Moody Blues and their classic period, and when they really reached the heights that would make them famous. So number 14 was an album called Strange Times from 1999. And this is when they had a few what I would call like last gasp albums, pop albums after their original success. This is not a bad album. It had some decent songs on it. One of them I liked a lot is called English Sunset. And I thought that was pretty decent. And the rest of they're just normal kind of pop tunes, but nothing too great. Give them credit for continuing on with what they were doing and continue to write songs because they could write songs. They were all very good. After that, at number 14, number 13, I have an album called Keys to the Kingdom, which came out in 1991. And that album had somewhat of a hit single on it called Say It With Love. And again, some other songs, there's some collaborations, mainly by Justin Hayward and John Lodge. And it's a pretty good, decent album, not bad to listen to, but nothing special. That was number 13. Number 12 was an album they came out with in 1986, and it was a very successful album for them, and one that I wasn't really all that crazy about. It was called The Other Side of Life, and back in the days of MTV, they had a couple of videos from that album on MTV. One of them was The Other Side of Life, and the other one was Your Wildest Dreams. They're not too bad, but they were gone from their progressive rock, symphonic rock, whatever you wanted to classify them as in their early incarnation, into strictly a pop band with some exceptions, with some good songs. This one wasn't really all that great. I didn't really care that much for this album, but then again, it wasn't bad. Anything that Justin Hayward does is good. He's such a good voice, and he's such a talent. He's such a great songwriter that it's worth a listen to anything that he puts out, whether it's solo albums or his work with the Moody Blues. And after that, at number 11, was an album that came out in 1988 called Sur la Mer. Now, this album I liked quite a bit better than the previous one that I just mentioned. And this one had another one of their big hits on MTV during that time called I Know You're Out There Somewhere. It also had some other good songs like No More Lies, Vintage Wine. It's a good album, a fun album. And I enjoyed this one pretty much. I thought it was a pretty decent album. It's worth buying. If you're a fan of the Moody Blues and of Justin and John and Graham Edge, who was still with the band, and Ray Thomas, then it was worth buying this album at the time. After this, we get into what are better albums, I think. Starting with number 10 was an album that came out in 1983 called The Present. And there was a couple minor hits on this album. Sitting at the Wheel, that was a pretty good album, a song written by John Lodge. And also Blue World, which was written by Justin Hayward. That was a good song. And then the end of it was a little mini suite by Ray Thomas, I Am and Sorry, which he did a pretty good job at. And I really kind of like this album. I kind of liked everything on this album. It's not a bad album at all. And again, I think it's worth owning if you're a Moody Blues fan. So that's number 10. Number 9 is an album called An Octave, and it was the 8th album by the original 5 members of the Moody Blues, the classic members of the Moody Blues. And this came out in 1978 after his 6-year hiatus. After they put out those 7 outstanding albums, they took a break for 6 years. Mike Pinder, especially the keyboard player, needed a break. And they came back and they tried to make a go of it. And they came out with an album that's pretty good, actually. But it doesn't compare to their first 7 albums. There's some really good songs on here, though. And some of them are true to the formula that they employed for most of their songwriting during their early career. Stepping in a Slide Zone. It's a really good song by John Lodge. A really good song. That's a good rocker. And, I always like that. Driftwood is another pretty song by Justin Hayward. Just a really terrific one. And Mike Pinder's final composition with the band, One Step Into the Light, is a very sweet and somewhat spiritual kind of song. Mike Pinder was a lot more spiritually aware towards the end. And, he quit the band basically because he wanted to spend time with his family. So, give him credit for that. It was the end of an era, but I mean, everything has to end sometime. So they gave us the very best that they could, and Mike gave us all that he could with the band. And he was an original member of the band, but that was probably the last thing we would hear by him. By the way, speaking of Mike Pinder, he also had a song that came out in a compilation. They had a compilation album, a double album called This Is the Moody Blues, and they had a song on there of Mike's that never made it onto an album. It's called Simple Game, which is a really good song. It came out in, I think, 1968 he wrote it, and I think it deserves mention, but you won't find that on any of their studio albums except on that compilation, This Is the Moody Blues. So that is number 9. Number 8 is somewhat of a comeback album, I would say, for the Moody Blues. In 1981, after Mike Pinder had quit, they got a new keyboard player named Patrick Moraz, who's a very skilled Swiss keyboard player. Really, really good. He played with Yes. He played with Yes on Relayer, if you're familiar with that album. He's a wonderful keyboard player. And he was very skilled on the Moog synthesizer, a very, very talented keyboard player. And his influence is all over this album, The Present, and a couple other albums after that I already mentioned. But Long Distance Voyager is a great album. This is almost as good as one of their original 7 albums, in my opinion. They had 2 pretty big hits from this album called The Voice and Gemini Dream. And, these are good songs, but there are other songs that I like better on there. Justin had a couple of other great songs. In My World, I love that song. I love the atmosphere of it. Meanwhile is a really good song. And John Lodge had Nervous, and he had another song there. I can't recall the name of it, but it's another really good song. Graham Edge, he had started writing some songs, a few albums back, and he had one of the really good songs on the album called 22,000 Days. Now, Graham wasn't a singer. He wasn't really much of a singer, but he had a really good speaking voice, and he wrote some good songs for the band. So John Lodge sang this song for him, and it's 22,000 Days, I guess, is an apparent lifespan. It's not a lot. It's all we got, he says. So it's actually pretty good. And Patrick's keyboards are just wonderful in this song. The song I was trying to think of by John Lodge, the other one was Talking Out of Turn, a really good song. Talking Out of Turn, Shot to Pieces. I like that a lot. And the album finishes off with with the first mini suite by Ray. The veteran cosmic rocker, Painted Smile, Reflected Smile. Cosmic Rocker is a great song. I love that. And Patrick Moraz really brings that to life, along with Ray's flute and everybody else's vocals and everything. I saw the Moody Blues twice, way back in like 1972, I think. And I saw them when they had just come out with this album in Providence, Rhode Island. And this was the last song that they did was Veteran Cosmic Rocker. And it was a terrific song. Really brought the house down before they did their encores. So I love this album. Long Distance Voyager. I said it's almost cracks the top 7, and it is just outstanding. It was a great critical success for them. Their first album without Mike Pinder, and Patrick Moraz did a great job in this album. Kudos to the whole band for this terrific album. So now we get to the 7 classic albums. And I love all of them. I love every single one of them. And I don't have a negative thing to say about any one of them. If you wanted to record it or to rate them any way, you can't go wrong. It was really tough. I have 3 favorites, and so those were pretty well set in stone. But after that, it was really hard to rate one ahead of the other. So, but you have to. If I have to do it, I'm going to do it. So, this is the way I rated their 7 classic albums. And when you talk about the Moody Blues, you had 4 guys who were songwriters and singers, and they were all very good at both. And the blend of their 4 voices on a lot of the records that they did and a lot of the songs that they sang is as good as anybody in rock history, like Crosby, Stills, Nash, the Bee Gees, Three Dog Night. When you have 4 voices, it creates this unique sound, powerful sound, especially Ray and Mike. Their voices in harmonies with Justin and John were just magic. Just beautiful, fantastic. Those guys, that's so much talent. So for number 7, I am going to go with 1972's Seventh Sojourn. And it was the last album that they put out as part of this classic 7. They had Octave after that, but as I said, I didn't think that measured up to these. So Seventh Sojourn was a huge commercial success, very, very popular. Had 2 of their biggest hits. And I also want to say that to me, it seems like each album kind of features, or maybe features isn't the right word, but one of the members of the band has his day, so to speak, in that album. And on this album, to me, the star of this album is John Lodge, because the 2 hits on this album were Isn't Life Strange and I'm Just a Singer in a Rock and Roll Band, both written by John, and both of them charted very high, both terrific songs. But there's a lot more than that. Mike Pinder has 2 songs on here, Lost in a Lost World and When You're a Free Man. And Mike had that, he played the mellotron, and he put the Moody in Moody Blues. If you listen to the style that he had, it was kind of mournful. He used minor keys a lot, and there was just an atmosphere to his songs, and he had that perfect voice for singing and for speaking too, because he did a lot of speaking in some of their songs. Ray Thomas had a wonderful little love song called For My Lady, had a nautical theme to it. I love that song. I love so many things that Ray did. And Justin, this was probably one of my least favorite albums of Justin's. Everything he did is good, don't get me wrong. But he had Land of Make Believe and New Horizons. They're nice songs, but nothing special. What I really like what he did is he co-wrote a song with Graham on this album called You and Me. I don't know how to remember these things. You and Me. And it's a good rocking song with a good riff that opens it up, and does a terrific job with that. There's a lot of collaborations between the Moody, different members of the Moody Blues. It's not always the same guys on these, especially on these 7 albums. A lot of them paired up with one another and making some really good things. And not so much that they needed help. I think Graham needed help. He was the drummer, and he wasn't as talented a songwriter as the others. But it just seemed like they shared ideas very, very nicely, did very, very well. And when they blended those together in songwriting, it came out very, very nice. So that's Seventh Sojourn at number 7. Number 6 was 1969's, one of 2 albums that was released in 1969, On the Threshold of a Dream. Another great album. Love this album. And to me, the star of this album is Mike Pinder. He has a song called So Deep Within You that he wrote. And then his closing at the end of the album, Have You Heard, The Dream, The Voyage, and all that is one of the great moments in the Moody Blues discography. Just fantastic. His work with the mellotron and the piano, and his song, Now You Know That You Are Real, Show Your Friends That You and Me Belong to the Same World, Turned On to the Same Word, Have You Heard? Beautiful, beautiful songs, lyrics, and music. Justin has some tremendous songs on here. Lovely to See You, and the beautiful Never Comes the Day. Ray has a couple of his sort of moody, somewhat whimsical songs, Dear Diary and Lazy Day. John Lodge, not much of an impact on this album for me. Send Me No Wine and To Share Our Love. And but John, he was very humble. He didn't always sing all of his songs. Usually, most of the guys sang their own songs that they wrote. And he asked Mike to sing this song to share our love. And to me, that really says something about someone when they do that. And it says a lot about John. So overall, this is just a wonderful album. And there's a wonderful collaboration on this album, a song called "Are You Sitting Comfortably" with Justin and Ray. And they wrote a few songs together. And I think there were three of them. And each one of them was absolutely outstanding. Um, and everybody's instruments weave in and around everybody else's songs. Ray's flute is everywhere. The mellotron by Mike is everywhere. Justin's guitar, whether it's his songs or someone else's, whether it's rhythm or whether it's leads, just great musicianship. And always John Lodge, very, very underrated bass player, as is Justin's guitar playing, very underrated. And Graham Edge, his steady, um, very laid back, always playing what is right for the song. His drumming is absolutely perfect for the Moody Blues, and much in the way that Ringo Starr's drumming was perfect for the Beatles. So I give them all credit as musicians. They were terrific, and together they were just perfect. There's a perfect blend of five guys, and it really comes through on every album. So number 6 was On the Threshold of a Dream. And number 5, in 1971, they came out with an album called Every Good Boy Deserves Favor. And I love this album. Oh, this is so good. Had the big hit single, The Story in Your Eyes by Justin Hayward. But the album starts off with a great idea called Procession, where there's no lyrics. And it's like the evolution of music from the beginning of man's communication. And it evolves into, like a chant, then into the flute, into a harpsichord, and finally into the electric guitar, which provides the opening riff to The Story in Your Eyes by Justin. Just really brilliant songwriting there. And that was written by all 5 of the guys, and that was Justin's song, The Story in Your Eyes. Beautiful start to that album. And then there are two songs by Ray Thomas on this, Our Guessing Game and the whimsical Nice to Be Here. Just a really cool song. His flute is so good in his songs and everything else that he does. And I just love Ray Thomas. I love what he brought to the band. And then John Lodge has 2 songs on this album also. Emily's song, which he wrote, is just a tender little sweet love song that he wrote for his daughter Emily. Very nice, sweet little song. Hard not to like this song. And on the second side, one of the most underrated songs in the Moody Blues catalog. I love this song to death. One More Time to Live by John Lodge. I just think it is a fantastic song. And it just doesn't get the credit it deserves. If you haven't heard it before, just go ahead and listen to it. One More Time to Live. Everybody chips in with their vocals, and John had a great idea for this song, and I think it's wonderful. And Justin has a collaboration with Graham Edge too, called After You Came. And all the other 4 Moody Blues, they each sing. They have lead vocals on this, so they all chip in and sing. And it's a very effective song. I like that one a lot too. And then Mike's last song on the album is I'm Going to Sing My Song. That's the name of it, My Song. It has an otherworldly, feel to it. Really good song. The atmosphere in their songs is so special. And Justin has another song on there that's You Can Never Go Home Anymore. Oh man, what a great song that is. The talent of these guys, the way they presented their lyrics with their music was just so special. They're so educated in their craft. I love everything they did. This is a fantastic album. Every Good Boy Deserves Favor. Something else that deserves mention about the Moody Blues is their album covers, because their album covers, especially this one, are just they're among the best in all of rock and roll. And some of them are just they're classic. They're iconic. This one is really, really good. So that was number 5. Number 4 is 1970's A Question of Balance. This album to me has 4 standout tracks in it by the 4 main songwriters. By the way, on the last album, I don't think I would give anybody any standout on that. I think they all contributed equally. This one here is kind of like the same, but I'm going to give this one, I'm going to highlight Graham Edge on this, because he co-wrote one song. He wrote one song of his own called Don't You Feel Small, and his drumming was so central to some of the big hits on this album. I'm going to give him the props that he deserves for this album. But A Question of Balance starts off with a song called Question, ends with a song called The Balance. And The Balance was written by Ray Thomas and Graham Edge, and it's just a really sweet song. But Question is one of the Moody Blues' biggest hits, and it's written by Justin Hayward. And it's just a great song. What can you say about Question? And if you know the story behind it, Justin had two bits that weren't really going anywhere. A fast song about like an anti-war song, and then a tender middle section. And he put the two of them together, and it blended perfectly into this classic hit called Question, and definitely one of the Moody Blues' biggest hits. Justin has two other songs on this album. I'm not really crazy about either one of them. It's Up to You and Dawning is the Day. They're good songs, but they're not the standouts. But Question is definitely one of the standouts. Another one of the standouts is by Ray Thomas called The Tide Rushes In. Oh, I love that song. It has a moodiness to it. It's all about the breakup of a relationship that he was in. I think it might have been a marriage. He said, "I'm really not so sure what side of the bed I should lay." And guys, we have all felt that way sometimes when we're not sure where our relationships are going, or where we are in our love life, and if we've hurt someone or if we didn't mean to. And it's really reflected beautifully in this song. John Lodge has two songs on here: "The Tortoise and the Hare," an upbeat kind of song. It's a little take on that famous Tortoise and the Hare race. But his other song is one of those great classic songs. To me, it doesn't get a lot of respect either, The Minstrel Song. I think that is a fantastic song. Listen to the one who sings of love. Follow our friend, our wandering friend, The Minstrel Song. It brings you back to, the medieval days, the Renaissance fair days or something. That's what it reminds me of. Beautiful, beautiful song by John Lodge. I think he did a great song of that. Justin's guitar is so good in that too. Set in that, and Graham's, pounding rhythm in it is just perfect for the song. And then Mike Pinder has "How Is It We Are Here," and probably his most famous song, an absolute classic. If you want to say this is the best Moody Blues song, I have no problem with that. "Melancholy Man." What a great song. I'm a melancholy man, that's what I am. Just a great song by Mike Pinder. It's what the Moody Blues are all about. And everybody having a part on all the songs on this record. So those four main songs are Question, The Minstrel Song, The Tide Rushes In, and Melancholy Man. And the other songs all fit in really well with that. So I love this album, Question of Balance. It's got Albert Einstein on the cover too. So that's pretty cool. So that's number 4. Then I come to my top 3, and it's really kind of hard to. I think these are just a cut above the others, just a slight cut above these. Those 7 albums are all great. So number 3, I have Days of Future Past, which is their first album. Came out in 1967. This is when Justin and John first joined the band. They decided they were going to go in a different direction and start writing their own songs. And they came up with an idea. A record company wanted to do them. I guess wanted them to do a theme on a day. Based on Dvorak's New World Symphony or something like that. I forget exactly what it was. And they came up with Days of Future Past, and they got someone to produce it who got a group of musicians together, a symphony orchestra, and each song on the album represents a different part of the day. And in between the songs, they have the fills, from the orchestra bringing you in. It just works perfectly. This is Justin's album, no question about it. Everybody's great on this album, but Justin has the 2 monster hits of his career, along with Question, I would say, in Tuesday Afternoon and Nights in White Satin. And both of them are, you've probably heard them a million times. Tuesday Afternoon is just a little frolic through a meadow on a sunny day, just happy to be alive and enjoying life to the fullest. I just love that song. And Nights in White Satin, an interesting story behind this. He wrote it as a lament for a lost love, a girlfriend that he had just broken up with or something. He was looking at the sheets, and that's all that was left. And he brought it to the band, and he sang it to them on the acoustic guitar, and they said, it's all right, I guess. And Mike said, why don't you play that again? So he started singing it, and he went over to the Mellotron, and as Justin, Nights in White Satin, he played on the Mellotron, do-do-do-do-do-do-do, that added the atmosphere to it, and everybody said, yes, this is a hit. And then Ray's unforgettable flute solo. This is what the Moody Blues were all about. They're all about lending their talents and making everybody else's songs something special and something wonderful. And Nights in White Satin is the perfect example of that. There was never a better song by this group that better represented everything that they were about than Nights in White Satin. And I just, it's a classic. I mean, what can you say about it? But that's not all. There's other great things. Ray has two great songs. The Another Morning. It's like looking at the beginning of a day through child's eyes. Just what a fantastic idea. That flute, and then Twilight Time, bringing the day to an end with Mike Pinder playing the piano on bringing that in. Excellent songs, excellent songs. And Mike also wrote Dawn is a Feeling, and he asked Justin to sing. That's really the first song that you hear on the album. The first actual singing is Justin singing Dawn is a Feeling, but that was Mike's song that he wrote it. And he sings a bridge in it. And he also has a wonderful song called The Sunset on there too. And that just typical of the Moody Blues and their style and what Mike brings to the band. John Lodge had the rocker peak hour, talking about noontime, and the very, very underrated Evening. The melody in that, and the sadness of the day coming near the end. Evening has earned its place today after all that we've done today. I've always loved that. Great job by John Lodge on that song. He was a tremendous songwriter. All four of them were tremendous songwriters, and I suppose Justin probably is the most talented, but that doesn't take anything away from the other guys. They're all supremely talented, and what they did together as a band was absolutely outstanding. And this album was a landmark album, Days of Future Past. It changed everything in 1967 and brought us into a whole different way of listening to music, honestly. That's number 3. Number 2 was the next album they came out with, their second album in 1968, In Search of the Lost Chord. And boy, you want to talk about an album cover, look at that one. Starts off with a poem. Graham Edge with his poems. He had poems in a lot of his albums. And usually they started off albums too. And he chose Mike Pinder to read the poems because Mike had this great speaking voice. And by the way, Graham had 2 great poems in Days of Future Past too, which are important parts of the album. It wouldn't be the same album without those poems. So, In Search of the Lost Chord starts off with the poem. I guess it's Mike speaking it, and it goes into Ride My Seesaw, a real rocker, which is the encore that the Moody Blues always played at their concerts. When they came back out for the encore, that's what they always did. It was Ride My Seesaw, John Lodge's great rockin'. And it goes into one of 2 songs by Ray Thomas, who is the star of this album for me. Dr. Livingston, I presume. A lighthearted song. We're all looking for someone. Columbus, Captain Scott, and of course, Dr. Livingston. Then it goes into this eerie, mysterious House of 4 Doors by John Lodge. And you can hear the door open and cracking open, and the music changes for each one. It's just really, really well done. And after the third door is open, you hear the opening strains to my favorite Moody Blues song, a Ray Thomas composition called Legend of a Mind, which is about Timothy Leary. I just can't say enough about this. This is psychedelia. This is progressive rock. This is hard rock. This is the mellotron exerting itself. Mike Pinder what he did on this record is, on this song, is you can't overstate it. And Ray's flute, and the way they recorded the flute when he does the solo, it starts from one side, and then it just drifts over to the other side. Then it comes back to the mellotron to whip you into that finale. He'll take you up, he'll bring you down, he'll plant your feet back on the ground. Just a genius of a song. I love that song. That is one of my favorite songs of all time by anybody, and just love it to death. And then when it comes flying back down to earth, that song, you go back to the House of 4 Doors, the last part of it, and that ends side 1. Going to side 2, you've got Justin Hayward making his first appearance with Voices in the Sky. Great song. Comes after that comes Mike Pinder, excuse me, on The Best Way to Travel. And then the flute brings you into a great um, collaboration between Justin and Ray called oh Visions of Paradise. Great song. It just and I don't know who wrote what. I often look at that and wonder how they collaborated with it, but it is a great song. Ray's flute just weaves all the way through. It brings everything together with Justin's wonderful voice. What a great singer Justin Hayward is. And it's a very satisfying song. It just takes you and it brings you this peace and this tranquility. And it goes from right there into a little intro into The Actor, another great song by Justin Hayward. And it's a look at himself, and I think he's kind of, you know, a little introspective. It's a wonderful song. The Actor is a wonderful song. His voice is so good. And then the last song on the album, again, it goes a poem by, um, I think this is by Graham. It might be, I don't know if it's by Graham or by Mike, but Mike says it. Um, and it goes into, it's the word, and the last song is O-M, which is another wonderful song by Mike Pinder. And Ray Thomas is a big part of this song. He helps with the vocals. It's a sing and response with Mike and with Ray. And Ray's flute really is the star of this song for me. Just a wonderful song, a wonderful album. It touches so many different parts of rock and roll and different genres. It's just a stunning achievement for 1968. I love this album to death. And for it not to be number one, I guess there has to be one better than that. And in my opinion, there was one just slightly a little bit better. And it was 1969. The other album that came out in 69 called Toward Children's Children. And this was inspired by man's landing on the moon. Starts off with Graham Edge and his composition Higher and Higher. The sound effect of a rocket blasting off. And then a sound of a harp. After that powerful, loud, resonant, higher and higher, the harp tinkling down into the eyes of a child, the flute of Ray into the eyes of a child. Beautiful song by John Lodge, The Eyes of a Child. Then that, in the middle of it, he goes into this little ditty by Ray Thomas called Floating, which is supposed to be on the moon. Now, this whole album kind of has a spacey feel to it. It's more or less a theme album about space flight and man conquering space and going into flight and things that we could expect in the future, things like that. They all kind of have that touch. And Floating is a cool thing. He's up on the moon, and it has a nice little feel to it. And then it comes back to the second part of With the Eyes of a Child. Then we hear from Justin with a little acoustic number. I thought he'd never live to be 100. I love the acoustic guitar anyways. And Justin does a really good job on this. It's a very short song. Then we go into Beyond, which is an instrumental by Graham. And then there is a collaboration by John Lodge and Mike Pinder called Out and In. And it's a wonderful song. I think I got that right, by the way. I know there's one collaboration. I should have researched this, I guess, but it's a great song, Out and In, and that ends side one. Then side two is another huge hit by Justin Hayward, a great song by him called Gypsy. Wonderful song. And Gypsy of a strange and distant time, traveling in a panic, all direction blind. You feel like he's out there in the universe searching for something, kind of like what we were doing when we conquered space. Goes to Traveling Eternity Road by Ray Thomas, another great song with that same theme in it. And then The Candle of Life, which is just a phenomenal song by John Lodge. And again, he had Justin Hayward sing the lead vocal in this because he knew that his voice was right for it. He swallowed his pride and he did what was right for the band. That's what they did. That's why I love this band too. They knew what to do to make everything the best that they could, and they certainly did with this song. Then that goes into another of Mike Pinder's bouncy little songs called "Sun is Still Shining," "Look at the View," "Earth is Still Shining for Me and You," or something like that. I don't remember the exact, but it's a great song, and it gives again that thought of being out there in space, that we're all going to be out there in space and we're going to be experiencing these things in the future. I think they were probably looking ahead towards where we are today, 40, 50 years into the future and where we're going to be. Then Justin comes back to, he revisits the "Never Thought I'd Live to Be 100" with "Never Thought I'd get to be a million." And it's even shorter, but it's the same thing, the same acoustic guitar and the same feeling and the same emotion behind it. And then the album finishes with a beautiful composition, a collaboration between Justin and Ray, maybe their best, called "Watching and Waiting." Just a phenomenal song. Waiting, I think he's just speaking to the cosmos, the two of them, saying, okay, we've gone out there. If there's anybody else out there, here we are. Come and say hello to us and find out what we're about so we can find out what you're about. Not that I necessarily believe in that or anything, but it's a great song. It has a great melody and a great vocal and a great thought behind it. The Mellotron is probably, this is probably their most Mellotron heavy album, although it's present in every album. But this is the one that I think kind of showcases it the best. Everybody is at the top of their game. It's a concept album. It's a theme album. There isn't one moment that isn't great on this album. Everybody does their very best. They all shine. And again, I don't necessarily know that there is a star on this album. I think everybody has equal contributions. And by the way, just because I say that about certain albums doesn't mean that everybody wasn't brilliant on all these 7 albums. And they're all very, very close in quality. I love all of them. And I hope that my review of this album gets you to listen to them a little bit, maybe, and give them a chance and discover the rich musical catalog of the Moody Blues. And will give you a new respect for them, maybe that you didn't have before. So thanks for listening. And may the Moody Blues rock on forever. As long as we listen to music, I think that people will enjoy and appreciate the magic that these 5 guys did, that they put together during their careers.